Okay, how's that? Check. Okay, I can't. You can see it. Can everybody hear me? I'm assuming everyone can hear me. Okay. Sound check. Can everybody hear me over there online? Thumbs up, maybe?
Gotcha.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
So we're all good on sound today?
Jeremy, it's up to you. You want to wait? You want to be here, or you want me to throw you in the waiting room for a little bit?
It doesn't matter to me either way. I can hang out. Either hang out in the waiting room.
It's going to give me a little, but I'm going to be able to manage a little better if I throw you in the waiting room. So hang out there for a little bit, okay?
I can hear everyone else good, just Danny's hard to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
I got the live stream on, but it's just on that screen and it's completely muted.
Okay.
But today when I left here, the cameras weren't working right and they still aren't. I just called and told him that.
So what's working now?
Well, the camera's on that screen right now, but if I try to push a button to go on one of you guys, it won't even manually let me do it.
So you're going to say, what do you say, that screen's all going to be a C?
Well, he's working on it. So there's not going to be any way for it to show up the TV. You won't be having the camera on any When I lost today, he said he was fixing it.
So he's zoomed in. We got about 5 minutes. So we're just going to manage.
He's doing it, but it is what it is.
All right, just do the best you can.
I just wondered if you saw it. I'm lowering it, so it's working.
Everybody good to go? Yes. Call to order the regular board meeting of May 12th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer Pop.
Here.
Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Barry is here.
All members are present. Item 4, presentations. There are no presentations tonight. Item 5, department reports. I have a couple of quick updates on department reports, and then I'll bring it up to the department heads that are here. The first one is another heads up on the Sugarbush Road HMA resurfacing project, which is scheduled to begin this spring, and I would expect earlier than later. And this is a higher, it's going to be earlier in the season for Macomb County Department of Roads reconstruction program, so expect some traffic issues from along Sugarbush from 21 Mile to Cotton, and from Cotton just about to the next Sugarbush. The next piece is the Weber Paddle Park. If you drove out there, that project is under construction right now. Substantial progress is getting made. It's amazing how much better it looks just from the clearing, and they're working on site work and subgrade, and that is moving forward as planned. One more that we had some questions on was the Jefferson Road path extension. I did send a transmittal as well to the bridge. There was a number of questions on that project. Hold on one second, someone jumped in the waiting room. That it currently is in the design phase. The topo survey, the topographic survey is nearing completion. Followed by soil borings, and then exploring each and every possible option for the connection of that bridge. I got to spend a chunk of time yesterday with the Macomb County Department of Roads Director about attempting to share Jefferson as much as possible to reduce on the cost that it's going to cost to enclose this ditch, use a retaining wall in this ditch, or H-piles or seawall or whatever that would be. And one option may be to curb Jefferson for this stretch right about here, and that would allow a potential shared use path. So this project is moving forward very, very well, and we'll continue to move forward to connect that piece of Jefferson. The temporary path is working fabulously. I want to give a shout out to the DPW for doing that. That was a horribly dangerous situation, and right now the residents are using that temporary path, which is great. Salt River Marsh Restoration Project, which is in the same neck of the woods, is still on schedule to finish design in 2020 with potential construction in 2021, and that is a 100% federally funded project and will be managed as well by the EPA and Eagle, I guess the new Eagle. Washington Road overpass. I mentioned this one again because we're going to have a 1-month shutdown of M19 by Pollard Park. The northbound M19 will be shut down completely. Southbound M19 will have one lane only. The exit ramp from I-94 to M19 from the northbound will be shut down completely for a widening project. The good news is, or for a bypass lane project, the good news is it's only scheduled for a 1-month closure, and that's the entire month of June. The census. We are doing very well in the census. However, we want to keep the pedal down there because this is going to be vitally important for Chesterfield, especially when we get to later in the discussion. We're going to be talking a little bit about budget impacts and revenue sharing. The 78.3% is very, very good. We're going to be doing everything we can to push that into this higher level, the 86 to 100, and we've already overperformed where we were in 2010. And those are the only couple of department reports I had. I know Trustee DeMuynck has one as well, and then I'll bring it up to the board. Trustee DeMuynck.
This is from Leisure Services. As a precautionary measure in response to the coronavirus pandemic, the Chesterfield Township Senior Center is closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. Recreation programming through Leisure Services will have a slow phased-in opening based on the executive orders, as well as the ability to effectively physical distance with sanitation protocols in place. Engage with us through our Facebook pages at the Parks and Rec and at the Senior Center. Also, get your Brandenburg Park passes beginning on Friday, May 22nd at the park booth. Entrance fees are required from Memorial Day through Labor Day. Launch your watercraft, walk fish from the pier, enjoy the green space, your lawn blanket, beautiful views along Anchor Bay. Consider catching a sunrise or sunset to make your day. The splash pad, playgrounds, pavilions, and public restrooms will remain closed until the COVID-19 precautions are lifted. Entrance is free for pedestrians and bicyclists. Local parks, trails, and open spaces have always served as places where people can find respite, seek peace, and restoration. We encourage our residents to visit our parks and adhere to the recommendations. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. The Historical Society report, the events for June and July have been canceled due to the COVID-19. Future events, there may be one in August, and we'll get back to you later if they're scheduled. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg or Trustee Joseph? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Just one update with regard to the Planning Commission. The meetings scheduled for Planning Commission have been postponed, so there will be no Planning Commission meeting in May. I believe June has also been sort of mothballed as we work to figure out how we can get appropriate public participation and all of the participants in the room safely. So Planning Commission and the ZBA meetings as well have been postponed. We do believe that there will be hopefully meetings that have been canceled starting in July. So I will, of course, update residents as we get notification from our planner regarding Planning Commission zoning ZBA meetings. Thank you.
Treasurer's update or clerk's update? Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. For the Clerk's Department, the Bureau of Elections, the Secretary of State, has confirmed that at this time there are no changes to be made to the August primary election. We anticipate that absentee ballots will be mailed sometime between the 26th and 29th of June. They will be in the office and available on the 20th of June. We will then have to process those ballots of all of the applications that have been received. Please keep in mind that if you would like a ballot for the upcoming August primary election, you must receive a completed application from you in order to issue you a ballot. We are strongly recommending, as is the Bureau of Elections, that those who feel comfortable and can vote by absentee ballot, we encourage you to do so. The most recent May election that other communities had did see a turnout of approximately 80 to 90% absentee ballots, and we expect to see a similar number in August. However, we will have all precincts open at this time. We are not making any changes to precinct locations. So at this time, you will be able to vote in person at your precinct location, but we are encouraging everyone to vote absentee if that is at all possible. We also have one public comment that was received for this item, Mr. Supervisor. If you'd like me to read that now or wait.
I think I've addressed it if it's the one I would ask for Salt River Marsh information.
It was. I just wanted the record reflected that we did in fact receive a request for a department report regarding the Salt River Marsh dredging project from Mr. Joe Kadich.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Treasurer LaFawn. Director Cottington.
I just want to report, we are still doing sandbags on Saturday and helping the public. However, we're going to be cutting the hours back from 8 to noon on Saturday because we're noticing that we're not getting that much participation after noon. So please tell everyone that's still coming and working with us on sandbags to come before noon on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further department reports? Move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 28, 2020. 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. Item 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. And item 6D, approval recommendation by Public Works to approve a purchase of 200 96-gallon carts from Cascade Engineering at a total cost of $9,100 from GL number 101000101.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry. I need motion and support first.
Support.
Support by Trustee DeMuynck. Treasurer LaFawn.
The item D on the consent agenda for the trash carts says that this went through finance. I'm just curious, this is almost like a business. Do we know how many of those we've sold, how many we have in inventory, and what our actual cost is to build these things, actually including like floor space and labor and delivery and gas and all this stuff?
Supervisor, our board rules do not permit discussion of consent agenda items. I would ask that item D be removed from the consent agenda and considered as a regular agenda item.
Motion by Trustee DeMuynck.
Joseph.
I'm sorry, motion by Trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item D.
I don't know that I need a motion on board rules. As you read, just indicate if a board member would like it removed, it's just removed. So I don't know that we need to vote on that.
But do you want to approve the board agenda? We still need a motion to approve the board agenda.
I think that's already been made. I would just ask that this item be removed and the balance of the consent agenda go forward as motion and supported.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Will the motion maker amend the motion to approve the consent agenda minus item D?
I will amend my motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item D to be considered separately.
Continued support. Trustee DeMuynck? You're muted. You're muted. Trustee DeMuynck's muted.
Trustee Joseph, want to remove item D? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, we need to approve the consent agenda, and then we're going to discuss item 6D right after we approve the consent agenda.
Yeah, that's fine. I had a hard time hearing you guys. Thank you.
We have amended motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee DeMuynck to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Discussion. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Nay. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, I'm not sure why your microphone is going off. If worse comes to worse, we can try to squeeze one of those over if it persists. I think that we'll get that figured out. The consent agenda is approved, items A through C. Item 6D, that was pulled from the consent agenda. Treasurer LaFata asked a question, and I do believe, I don't know if you're finished with your question, and Assistant Director Johnson's here.
There's quite I mean, since this went through finance, there should be a lot of answers. Originally, there was $40,000 that was approved. With this, we're at 44.3, give or take a few nickels. I'm just wondering how successful our endeavor has been to supply these trash carts to our residents, assuming that we understand the full burden costs for these, and the fact that we have to support, putting separate funds together for state sales tax and everything else. When I was doing some inquiry, this is almost like another business unit, like the water and sewer fund, which we should almost start reporting separately, because it's a business unit. It shouldn't be attached to anything else, and it should be separate. So I'm just wondering if you know what we have on inventory and what the full cost is and what we're selling for, I'd appreciate it.
In terms of the inventory, we've sold items. We initially bought 450 cans, 100. It was 100, so there's 4 different styles. There's 96-gallon garbage cans. There were 64-gallon garbage cans, 64-gallon recycling, 64-gallon compost. We bought 100 of each, except that
150 first time around.
one of them had 150. I think it was 450 total. So one of them had 150 total, I believe. So it's a total of 450 cans. I don't have it in front of me. I apologize.
I have the invoice.
Okay. So we sold out of the 96 gallons. So we were out. We ordered them. I think we had like 15 to 20 left when we made the order. We got the approval that came to the board a few weeks ago. Since then, we ran out, and we just now got them delivered, so now we're redistributing them again, the 96-gallon carts only.
Yeah, there's been the 96, there's 150, 100, and there's a new order out, which this one correct.
So 200. We have 0. We just now got 100 garbage cans last Thursday, so we have 0 of the 96 gallons.
Did we sell out 250?
Yes.
And
No, we sold out what we had originally. We haven't sold what we just got delivered last week.
okay.
So the original amount, 150, is gone. We've already had back orders of another 10 to 15, so we've had an uptick in the 96 gallons. That's why we're buying additional, because we've had an uptick in the use of those ones.
Our purchase cost versus our sales cost based on our investment into warehousing, assembly, and delivery is...
I honestly can't speak to that number. If you want that number, I'd be happy to pull it for you. I didn't do a cost with, if you're talking man hours and trucks and trailers, things of that nature. I know this is the cheapest cart anybody can buy in the area. There's no way you can buy less expensive, but in terms of the actual cost, I honestly don't have an answer for you here.
So we don't know. The other thing I know is that the letter from GFL, them allowing us to do this, they said that we were responsible for all warranty. Have we experienced any warranty since?
We've only had 2 or 3 carts that had issues with wheels that we've since fixed and put the wheels on correctly. We haven't had to use extra parts at this point in time. I can get those numbers for you, though. I
think we should start looking to see what the real cost is, because this really is a business enterprise, especially when we have to pay sales tax on it.
Not a problem.
I'll take a little shot at that. I'm very happy with this program. I'm not, Treasurer LaFatte, you didn't support it when it came across, so I'm not surprised you don't support it now. This is a service to our residents. I could go back and find the agenda item. It's broken down very, very well as to how much the costs are, and an APO was put together of what we set the rate at for sales moving forward. I'm happy with the program. It's success. And I think I'm hearing nothing but positive feedback from the residents. Keep up the good work. We'll review the costs. Not only that, our raw costs from the vendor on these carts, and adjust the sales price to our residents as necessary. And I think you're doing a very good job, and I commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further board comments? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. The concern and the support on the original agenda item is, I can't speak for Treasurer LaFatte, but I share some of his concerns. We can say we're proud of it, we're great, we're happy. Deputy Director Johnson said, I know it's the cheapest price anywhere out there, and I think Treasurer LaFatte's questions are really geared at determining if that's true. And it's like, if we got a great deal on the composite plastic, and we said it's the cheapest plastic, and then we started forming the plastic and melting the plastic and putting the logo on, we couldn't use the raw material price as the finished price of the product. So we get a can in the township. We have individuals that work to assemble the can. We have individuals that work to deliver the can. We have warranty issues. We have fuel. We have the legacy costs associated with the individuals who are employed, so their pensions are attached. Everything about that employee is attached to that cart. So, again, I am not tickled with the idea that the treasurer brings up a point about the overall cost and then is lectured about his support then versus his support now. I'm sure residents are happy with it. I think maybe there's also an opportunity to spread the happiness around to all the residents. So maybe this is such a fantastic deal that the board might want to expand and just provide to the residents carts. And we get out of the cart selling business, and we just provide that to residents. But we can't do that if we don't get updates from the team. And I know that you're part of the team. I find myself on the outside looking in a lot, and it would be helpful if the team provided numbers when you want to make another purchase, and the assessment report from the team captain who picks the team players saying, I'm glad it's going well, is not a breakdown of cost. So I think it would be fair, and we've talked about it before, your man hours are not free. It's not free when we have DPW people working on garbage carts. And if enough DPW people are working on garbage carts, they might be pulled away from things that affect the water rate. And so these costs associated with man hours need to be constantly monitored. And so the raw price, unit price from Cascade Engineering isn't a reflection of the total cost. So those are valid numbers that should be provided, and an update, quantitative update, of how the project is going instead of a qualitative update with the supervisor's gold seal of approval would be helpful. Thank you.
Any further? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what Trustee Joseph and Treasurer LaFatte have already addressed this situation. Our first batch of garbage receptacles that came through. I supported them, not happily. I don't recall when, and I could be wrong, when Rizzo was in there, I don't recall the township being in the garbage container business back then. And again, I don't know why we're doing high fives on this. The only reason I will support it, hopefully, Mr. Johns, you're kind of caught in the middle here, but hopefully there's a better record keeping of what the actual cost is to purchase and assemble these things. The only reason I'll support it is I don't believe our residents should be jeopardized by the shortcomings that this program might have put them in. They do need the receptacles. Got calls from residents getting green stickers because things are wrong, putting their garbage out in black bags because GFL wouldn't pick up the receptacles. Animals were tearing everything up, making our neighborhood, making our community kind of look a little shoddy. So I will grudgingly support it just because I don't want our residents to suffer because of what may be up. I don't know if it was avoidable or what, but I'll let it go right there.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Is there a motion on the floor right now?
There is a motion. There's not a motion, actually. So.
All right, I will make the motion to approve the purchase.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg. Support by Supervisor Acciavatti to approve item 6D. And that was my bad. I should have had a motion before we discussed that item, although I think it was done before. Director Johnson, I don't know if you'd like to comment on any of the comments from the board members, or?
Yeah, I apologize for having information available. I'll definitely make sure to bring that information next board meeting. I'd be happy to bring that data so you guys can have rest assured that it is working the way we're saying it's working. I'll provide that for you next meeting.
Treasurer LaFaro.
I think that everything that the township does, the residents deserve proper stewardship and how their tax dollars and all their money is spent. Doesn't matter how big or how small. And I understand residents are happy with this, but if we don't have a proper accounting for them, we're just fooling ourselves. And it's not that I'm thoroughly against this, but what I'm thoroughly against is the fact that we move on something and we don't know what the real cost is. And this is not the first time it's happened. Thank you.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Supervisor Acciavatti to approve item 6D as submitted. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFaro.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7 is the regular agenda. 7A.
Item 7A is an item to approve a recommendation by Public Works to approve a 3-year uniform contract extension with Cintas at an estimated cost of $14,055.08, with $9,955.92 coming from GL number 591441741 and $4,099.16 coming from 101265740.
Do I have a motion? Motion by Trustee Joseph.
Second.
Support by Clerk Berry. Discussion.
I'll do a quick clarification if you don't mind. I just want to make sure the board it's clear that this $14,000 and change is for 1 year. It's not for all 3 years. That is an annual amount. That will increase by roughly 3% each year. Not this year, but next year and the following year. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And I know that the facility operations is looking to potentially change the pants that we're in. The pants that are changed will be a lower cost. But in making that change, it's like a $2.50 per garment cost to make that change. So looking at a couple $100 to make that change, but long term, this number will go down. So until they do that, I don't know the exact number, but this will be a rough amount of what it'll be moving forward.
Any questions for Assistant Director Johnson? Comments from the public that are here? Clerk Barry, you received any online submission of questions?
There have been no questions or concerns submitted for this item online.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Clerk Barry. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaPata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7C.
Item 7B. Approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase 35 Motorola XTS1500 radios and accessories from Command Communications at a total cost of $29,543.25, with $19,414.14 coming from GL number 591000140 and $10,129.11 coming from 101265970.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion.
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Joseph.
Just a quick administrative question. You indicated this was, just so I'm on the right agenda item, you indicated agenda item C. She said B.
7B.
I was just so I'm in order here, the carts became A.
The carts was still 6D.
It became 6D. Okay.
It's about 6D.
I see, okay.
Motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Any further discussion? Questions from the online folks? Or the public? Clerk Barry, do what you do.
There have been no comments or questions submitted via online for this item.
Motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7B as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaPata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Apologize about that speaker always going off.
That's okay.
Motion passes. Item 7C.
Item 7C is a recommendation to the Township Board of Trustees to authorize engineering design services to Spalding, DeDecker for the Edgewater Drive Paving Special Assessment Project in the amount of $26,344.32.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee DeMuynck.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. And Mr. O'Connor is here, and Jeremy with Spalding, DeDecker is on the computer as well, on the Zoom meeting. Discussion. Questions from the board or the audience, the virtual audience?
There have been no comments or questions submitted on this item.
Seeing no comments from the board, are there any public comments? Motion by Trustee DeMuynck, supported by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaPata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7D.
Item 7D is a request by the Township Supervisor to continue to discuss financial relief options and budget implications relating to COVID-19.
I'll make a motion to open discussion.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry to open discussion. This is a continuation of some of the discussion that has occurred in the prior meetings, I guess the prior 2, 3, 4 meetings. Relentless discussions constantly with the management team and the finance director on virtually every level ever since this crisis has started. However, I wanted to continue that discussion with this board. A lot was going to be happening in the pretty near future for Chesterfield. One is Revenue Estimating Conference is Friday, and the state of Michigan has 2 revenue estimating conferences a year, or every year by statute. I expect them to have 3 this year. So they're probably going to add an emergency revenue estimating conference in August. However, the next one is May the 15th, which is this Friday. So us, along with every other municipality, is going to get some clarity. I wanted to touch base real quick on the 6 budgets that we had. Another thing that's going to be happening is tomorrow we're having our post-audit meeting with Plant Moran. And followed up in June, you will see our audited financial statements from Plant Moran and a presentation on our 2019 audit and the position that we're in. The 2020 budget year is already chipping along, going along very, very well as we go. Now, our fiscal year is December 31st. A lot of communities are right smack dab up against their next fiscal year, and that is not the situation that we're in. So, just quickly wanted to touch on the 6 budgets, the 6 budget funds we have, which is General Fund, Public Safety, Building Inspection, Parks and Recreation, and our 2 enterprise funds, which is Brandenburg Park and Sewer and Water. And from a budget impact, just the primary revenue source for each of those funds. And if you watch some of the prior budget presentations or our budget book, it dives into this very, very deeply, and we will be doing that in the coming months. I just want to touch on the primary sources. General fund, revenue sharing is the hot topic for all municipalities, and Chesterfield's no different for being a part of that discussion. Our public safety fund is funded primarily through property taxes. Our building inspection fund is funded through development and inspection fees. Parks and Recreation Fund is funded through programming fees. Brandenburg Park is funded exclusively through the gate fees and pavilion rentals, and our sewer and water fund is primarily funded through water bills for residents and customers, along with development fees. So each one of these major revenue sources are going to be impacted differently depending on the duration of this crisis and in how it affects the private sector and our customers as we go down the road. Also, it's important to note that every municipality is going to be impacted by this very, very differently. We are in much different shape and a much better position for a number of reasons than a lot of other municipalities, and we touched base on that the last several meetings. One I want to run through real quick is revenue sharing. And Trustee Joseph and I and Treasurer LaFada got a chance to talk about this slide at a meeting last week. The chart shows in the blue here, this number shows our actual revenue sharing payments from 2007 to 2019 when you see this graph kind of blow up in a bunch of different directions. So these are actual revenue sharing numbers received from the state of Michigan, and revenue sharing just spits out of a formula, and it's based on sales tax. We receive 100% constitutional revenue sharing and very, very little statutory revenue sharing. So sales tax gets collected. It goes through a formula, 15% of the 4% sales tax rate, and that money gets dispersed on a per capita basis to municipalities. reason why Chesterfield is in a much, much better position than most or a lot of other communities is we do not rely on an income tax or any other outside taxes like the casino taxes or local income taxes for any of our revenue. It's essentially property taxes, revenue sharing, and user fees. We are also a growing community. So what you're going to see here is the blue is actual. This bump right here was in 2010 during the last major correction for revenue sharing. Now you see what happened in Chesterfield is we got the census bump. So from 2000 up to 2010, our revenue sharing numbers were based on the 2010 census. So 2010 comes along, the economy is still bad, the economy is still flat. However, the new census comes along and we get a bump because we have more residents and the per capita amount that comes to Chesterfield increases. We expect that similar bump coming in 2021 due to the expected population increase that we've had. Even without that increase, on the expense end, we've been doing a very good job since 2017 in controlling costs, which is the next piece of this equation. Even without that bump, I'm very comfortable with our position in Chesterfield. That can't be said about a lot of other communities. General fund revenue, along with our property tax revenue as well. So what you're seeing here is three different projections. The dotted line is what was projected pre-COVID, and you'll see a very substantial jump, and these are relatively conservative on a per capita basis before COVID. Green would be a optimistic effect of COVID. Purple would be a most likely or a realistic projection, and red is what I believe would be a kind of a worst case scenario. Now obviously the worst case scenario can never be bad enough. If there's no people and no population, then this could fall all the way to zero. I don't think that's very realistic. This is where those numbers are. I just wanted to make sure I cleared up and talked about the position of our general fund and the position that we're in to handle this bump. One, it's because of very, very tight expenses controls that we've had in the last 3 years. Two, it's decreases in expenses. And three, it's a pretty healthy fund balance of well over 100% of our operating costs here. So that's one I really want to touch on. There'll be much, much more on this as we move forward. Some of the relief options, we've talked about them all individually. Water rate relief or COVID credits or rolling back water rates. I know Treasurer LaFar has brought that up. We talked about property taxes. That would be a way to give some kind of relief to our residents. Trash carts was brought up. The door's open there to be a general fund type relief. Programming and recreation fees is one idea to ease the burden on our residents. Brandenburg gate fees we can discuss if we want to do something there, along with a number of other options like removing the fee for online or for credit card payments. That would encourage utilization of credit cards for payments, lessen the human interaction. Every one of those relief options would have different budget impacts. I would open it up to the board to see if there's any discussion here that you'd like to have now. Trustee Joseph.
Mr. Supervisor, if you wouldn't mind, could you return that slide, the projected, thank you. So, as you mentioned, and as we discussed at the previous board meeting, one relief item that has been brought up specifically by Treasurer LaFar had to do with water rates. Yes? No, the projections was the one that we, yeah. So one of the things that, we decided on at the last board meeting was I asked Treasurer LaFava to withdraw his motion so that we could get in a room and talk about some of the things that it sounded like we were all on the same page. And I don't want to reiterate the entirety of your slide, but one of the things that I found most helpful in terms of looking at maybe why there's some division on the board was the concept of revenue as it relates to growth. And that can mean a lot of things, but in this particular case, the growth that you were talking about and the growth that the slide is talking about is directly attributed to the census. And the significance that you pointed out in our discussion was when the census tabulation came out from the 2010 census, and in 2011 it was determined that the revenue sharing the township received from the state was based on 38,000 residents, and that was the total number of residents as determined by the 2010 census. I'm sorry, the 2000 census. The 2010 census indicated that the township had 6,000 more residents in our township, and so our percentage of revenue sharing went up in proportion to those additional 6,000 residents. It really wasn't fully felt immediately because we were in a bit of a recession. We were still dealing with declining property values. But what actually happened in 2009, as the blue arrow goes down, dipping into 2010, and then shoots up over $1 million from 2010 and 2011, was directly attributed to the increased 6,000 residents and their proportional share that they represented in the 2010 census. So when we get into discussions now, and we have heard from fellow board members who feel comfortable moving forward with projects, some of the most notable were the paddle park or the path on the Salt River Bridge. Some of us have pointed to concerns about the unknown and where the economy is. And I think, Mr. Supervisor, you've said on several occasions that you're very confident, and that confidence, in part, is based on the fact that all the data and all of the forecasts with regard to our population size indicates another bump in resident population from the 2010 census, which won't be confirmed until the 2020 census is complete. But even a modest increase, and the 50,000 residents up from 44,000 residents is roughly commensurate with another $1 million in revenue, potentially just from the revenue sharing formula. We went through this over a couple of hours, really, on Tuesday. And I was very happy to be in this discussion where we were considering all 6 budgets and areas in all 6 budgets. And the meeting didn't end, with hugs. I didn't expect that it would. But it did end with a very concrete takeaway. And that is 2 different opinions regarding what we should be doing as a result of these projected increases. And I think the takeaway that I had, at times I did feel a bit like Switzerland, but in listening to both sides of the table, I appreciated and respected your position, Mr. Supervisor, that you feel comfortable based on the projections that you've seen coming in the way of revenue sharing, and that you feel comfortable moving forward with some expenditures that you've been championing along the way. Treasurer LaFava's position was, I like to make decisions once the money is in the bank. I'm not comfortable going forward. And I thought that was a very appropriate place to be in. It just happened to be different than yours. So I'm hoping, as we continue to discuss all areas of budget relief, and we're talking about what revenue will we have available to us, I hope that we can, kind of debate these things from that standpoint. I truly believe that there are some of us on this board who are encouraged by the fact that we are optimistically awaiting additional revenue as a result of the increase that's naturally occurred in our township over the last 10 years. The census clearly drives the formula for revenue sharing. But I'm not interested in spending that money before it arrives and then being caught flat-footed if something really dramatic happens with regard to COVID and the impact that it has on property values. I think that is enough of a game changer for me to say, let's hold on to whatever revenue comes our way and have a moratorium on non-essential spending. So I'm encouraged by the discussions about the budgets and areas in particular that we can provide relief to residents who are struggling, and also relief to our employees, some of which are unable to work remotely. We have an addendum on the agenda tonight to deal with one bargaining unit, one group, but I think that there's an entitlement and some obligation to the other members of our township workforce that are working in a very risky environment in multiple ways. And I would like to begin that discussion, and I know you used the word relentless, and it's happened, relentless discussion has been going on since the crisis was really called a crisis, and since we declared a township state of emergency and a state and national state of emergency. But we haven't progressed past the discussion phase, and sometimes there is a call to action, and I think we're there. I think we need to make decisions on relief that really can help our residents and our employees. We have enough data, and I think it's time to act on some of those. And it is confusing when the message is, I'm extremely confident, but I think we should wait to give somebody a few $100s in recognition of the danger they put themselves in to serve their fellow man. It's a confusing message, but we'll continue to discuss it. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFada.
Your slide back up there where you've had the increase in population from 2010 to 2020, and your number for 2020 anticipated or projected is, I can't see it all that well from here.
50,000.
All right, so
10,000 or 49,000 or 48,000.
all right, so
the numbers up there.
when I do projections and stuff, I try to find and research and get data. And when you go to SEMCOG's only got 47,378, which is 2,000 less than we've got on your graph there, which makes me a little nervous because now we're working to a number that isn't referenced in SEMCOG's projection, which they're supposed to be an entity that can project increase in growth in population. So that kind of makes me a little nervous, and it's right now when I don't have any supporting data, I call that a hypothetical piece of the pie. The other thing, when I look at University of Michigan study, they say Michigan overall is going to take a hit on their tax base of minus 10.5% in 2020, minus 12.3 in 21, and minus 8.1 in 22. That's how long it's going to take to recoup all this. So it puts me on wanting to be on the safe side. Like I mentioned before, I'd like to see this move a little bit farther forward before we start spending a lot of money on anything else that's not essential until we get some better numbers from the state to understand where we're at. Because right now, your graph and any data I have right now doesn't really match up too well. Thank you.
Any further comments on the board before I bring it up to myself for some rebuttals? A couple things. Trustee Joseph and Treasurer LaFada, some misnomers there. I'm very comfortable because of the actions this board has taken on the expense side. I am very comfortable because of the actions this board has taken on the good government side. I'm very comfortable because of our processes, our procedures, our relentlessly only investing in essential things. The disconnect is, and I'm hoping this was a good, I want to jumpstart the conversation because the last several meetings, I thought we'd be talking about, well, should we talk about the potential of lowering property taxes? And there's going to be a whole lot of that. But you got to have the foundation of what we're talking about here. There's no use in burning your house down when you run into a little problem, and that's what's kind of being asked to do here. We have a rubber paddle park that's been going on for 5 years with a grant of $265,000. You don't throw that money away because we have to have an investment in Chesterfield of $114,000. There's no value there. We have a $1 million grant at Brandenburg Shoreline. That's $1 million in free money. That's $1 million in money that we worked very, very hard to get for our residents. We're in a strong enough position to spend that 10-15% to take advantage for our residents that those grant dollars. That's really the point I was trying to make. Is you don't throw away all the good when we're not in a position that we need to cry wolf. Regardless if we get a census bump and a revenue sharing bump, which I anticipate, I'm still very comfortable with how we have managed this township. And that's all. I just wanted to start the conversation. And I don't think we'll ever agree on infrastructure projects. I don't think we'll ever agree on property tax rates or any of this stuff. Just want to lay out there that I'm very comfortable with our community. Can't say that about neighboring communities. Can't say that about every other municipality. You're going to hear in the news, the state of Michigan's in big trouble. They are. They could have a $2 to $3 billion hole in their general fund. And there's no way out in that general fund that's easy. City of Detroit could be in big trouble. City of Port Huron could be in big trouble. Other municipalities could be in big trouble. We are not. That doesn't mean we're not cognizant. Doesn't mean we're not aware. Doesn't mean that we're not prepared. We're in a different position than those other municipalities. So there'll be a whole lot more on this, probably every single meeting moving forward. Definitely the audit tomorrow coming out as a draft and presentation, followed up by the public safety millage and budget in July, and right into the 2020 budget. So we'll be continuing that discussion. Any further comments from the board before we close discussion on item 7D?
Just one, Mr. Supervisor, if I may. Joseph. So I do better in the closed room format. The three of us, we can talk in a very unvarnished way. My strong suit of this is not really diplomacy. I'm not real subtle. But when you say things like, it's just a little problem and we don't have to burn our house down, you're talking hyperbole. If we were in the room together, I'd tell you exactly what I think of that. You tell me I'm crazy, and we could, try to have a dialogue there. But you cannot possibly categorize the COVID-19 pandemic as a little problem. And I don't know of any suggestion that we said let's burn our house down. You're talking in hyperbole. That doesn't make any sense. There is nothing that happens to money in the bank. There's nothing that burns it or throws it away to simply sit on it and determine where you are foot underground. Now, I defer to your opinion on whether or not we are in an optimistic place or a pessimistic place. There's no sky is falling. We're leaders, and I don't think I saw Treasurer Lafada buckle at the thought of having to, save money or be fiscally conservative. But when you say burn your house down, little problem, when you refer to $1 million in free money, I really just want to hang out with you. I didn't grow up around free money. I don't know where free money comes from. I've never heard of free money. In fact, anybody who's ever offered me free money, it turned out to be a very bad deal. So I don't know what you mean when you talk about free money. And again, it's a philosophical divide. And they're typically packaged in the the political landscape of all of the budget controls and the principles, they're just very, it's divisive rhetoric when we start talking that way. And I think we can concede that we are in a position of receiving some additional constitutionally guaranteed revenue as a result of the way our township charter is structured, and we're entitled to revenue. But there's no integrity in talking about, let's talk about lowering property tax. That's not really an option that we have. We have very little control over the property tax rate. You're specifically talking about special assessment districts, and the biggest one we have is our public safety. And I don't want to risk people's safety to play budget gimmicks and talk about extreme confidence. I want to see the money in the bank. Then we can make decisions, and I appreciate the idea that we will get a bigger share of the revenue if our population grows. But there's some speculation about, is it going to be 50? Maybe it's not. What if you've spent 50 and 47 shows up? And what if the impact across the country and the impact economically of the COVID-19, the unemployment and the property value? So the argument that we get a bigger slice of the pie, therefore we've received I think Treasurer Fata called it a spendemic. We received a vaccination for the spendemic because we have additional people in the township and bigger revenue, bigger slice of the pie. But if the entire pie shrinks, then you're saying we will get 2/3 of a grape instead of half of a watermelon. It's not, proportionally, it's a problem. And so if the state goes in the tubes, we're not immune because our population went up by about 4,000 people. We are not in any position to spend money and carelessly. I think it's a bad idea, and there is no such thing as free money. This is not a burning your house down situation, and the COVID-19 is a much more pronounced tragedy in our country than a little problem causing people to talk about the sky is falling. People are talking about being conservative, and that's the starting point.
Any further comments? I think we'll wrap this up with, I disagree with everything that you said, characterized, and I was looking forward to a more productive conversation. Looks like we have a public comment.
Okay. Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I think this deserves a lot more discussion that's beginning here. Essentially, you're looking at what if we get this extra money from the increased population and we're going to do it, but are you looking at what could happen to the rest of the budget as other companies are doing? There are companies now that are forecasting they're going to have basically no revenue or no profit revenue for the next 3 months, possibly beyond that, because of everything they've got to do. You're also looking at probably increased health costs for everybody. You know that's going to happen. You've got hospitals that have laid off people, and they're going to have to make up their revenue to bring the people back. That's not going to happen right away. The only way you're going to do it is by getting increased costs to them. So your health costs are going to go up. There's everything across the board that's affected that's going to happen that's not going to, may not affect that, but it's going to affect the rest of your budget and be a hell of a lot higher than you're expecting it to be. And I think you got to look at it from both ends. You just can't say, I expect that money and this is what we're going to do with it. You got to look at what your total budget should be. I personally would go expect the worst. And then on that one, you can expect, expect you're going to have to increase your budget, or your budget's going to be impacted by 10 or 15%, and then say, is this going to cover it? And if it does, what do I do about the other projects that we really don't need to do? Like I say, I think there's a lot more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could, maybe I miss misexplained this. If you look at the screen here, every day, constant, every single general ledger item, our budget has gone we've gone a long ways from where it was to receiving awards, for everything from the process, every number from every expense, every piece of revenue from each budget is, of course, looked at from every single possible angle. And the point is, and there is going to be a whole lot more public discussion on this, because we obviously are not going to be able to communicate with board members who have seen that budget book, who have seen the work that's gone into it, who have seen the trajectories that we were on with OPEB, with all those different functions, and seen the trajectory that we're on now. And it's because of the changes that we made. So it's never-ending, relentless work on running a best practice budget like Chesterfield Township has. That's why you're comfortable extending a bike path or taking advantage of a state grant for millions of dollars, even when there's uncertainty around us in the rest of the state. Any further discussion before I move on? This is not an action item, it's just discussion. Clerk Berry, we're going to move on to item 8A.
And Mr. Supervisor, there were no comments or concerns or questions received online for this item. Item 8A, Addendum. Approve a request by Public Works to partner with Macomb County Department of Roads to add 1 additional mile to the limestone program within Chesterfield Township with a 10% township match of $7,885 from GL number 101446929.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Supervisor Acciavatti. Director Johnson is here if you have any questions. And I put up on the board the map of what was already approved and what will be added with this additional 1 mile that has been offered to us to participate in this program.
So you guys approved back on February 11th 3 miles of road in the northeast quadrant there to do with this program. We were fortunate the county reached out to us for no additional mile. So they will include 24-mile road between Chesterfield Road and Fairchild as that mile. So it'll come out to exactly 4.0 miles, which will work out perfectly for this program. And that'll start our way moving towards the northwest area for those roads. It's the exact same cost per mile for the gravel, it's just an adding additional mile. So as this mentions, it's adding $7,885, and so it'll be a total cost of $31,540, of which you've already approved $23,655.
Questions for Director Johnson? From the visual online viewers, I obviously strongly support this. It's something I advocated for right when I walked in the door with the Macomb County Department of Roads. This is an example of a smart spend by the township. From its inception till now, the township's going to receive $315,000 worth of road improvements. That's the cost for the 20,000 tons of limestone at a total cost of $31,000. Those are the type of expenditures and value that our residents are looking for. To be able to add this 24-mile road piece to this year was huge, because this wasn't supposed to be done until next year, and that is one of our biggest dust problems and safety problems. So it's good to have that piece moved back up to get a new gravel road on that section for the first time in probably 40 or 50 years. So any further comments from the board or the public before I turn it over to Clerk Berry? On item 8A, motion by Clerk Berry, support by Supervisor Acciavatti.
There have been no comments or questions submitted online for this item. Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Motion prevails. Item 8, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Item 8B.
Item 8B is to approve a recommendation by Trustee DeMuynck and Trustee Joseph to pay a one-time only COVID-19 hazard pay stipend of $1,100 to all 45 sworn officers of the Chesterfield Police Department. Payment to be made available immediately from public safety funds, specifically accounts 205-301-703-006, 205-301-704.001, 205-301-704.005, and 205-301-705.003.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Joseph. Is there support? Support. Support by Trustee Anderson. Discussion.
Supervisor, if I may.
Trustee Joseph.
I want to thank some of my fellow board members for assisting me with this motion, although it was kind of co-sponsored by Trustee DeMuynck. I appreciate the conversation and caucus with Treasurer LaFatta as well as Trustee Anderson. I think Supervisor Acciavatti touched on it in the last regular agenda item, which was the discussion, and that is the discussion about the economic impact and so forth. And he indicated the word he used was immense, so let me make sure I got it right. The word was relentless discussion, and I think that's accurate. I think there has been a lot of discussion, and it was a topic that we discussed in our meeting on Tuesday, which started with Treasurer LaFatta's interest in the water rates. This was one of those topics. I don't want to represent anybody else's position, but I think it's fair to say that the reason we haven't come forward with a specific package for individuals is because there is a lot of discussion about, and appropriately so, the impact of the 6 budgets that are potentially involved when you start talking about COVID-19 hazard pay. For Treasurer LaFatta, I think Trustee Anderson, and I know in talking with Trustee DeMuynck, there's a fundamental belief that the ongoing conversation, which it really is a situation when all is said and done, more is said than done. And it is time to act. And the action that is being contemplated tonight and brought forward tonight was really only the first of what I anticipate to be several, but it broke down this way. There are individuals in our township who do not get the benefit of working from home. There is no essential, non-essential. They are expected to carry on their duties interacting with the public in a very dangerous job which they chose freely. They knew what they signed up for when they took the oath, and that involved your employer issuing you Kevlar because you might be shot at, and a weapon that you're trained on so that you can return fire and protect yourself and the residents of this township. They knew what they signed up for when they took the oath. What they didn't anticipate was COVID-19 and the expectation that they would carry on their duties in the exact same way without regard to their personal safety and what we know from the science, the safety and well-being of their family when they return home. The breakdown for some of us on this board has been to simply bring this forward with the first group, and that is law enforcement. We arrived at some consensus on the starting point being the 45 sworn officers who are on the street performing their duties consistent with their oath of office. I want to be clear that this $1,100 stipend does not represent in any way full financial compensation commensurate with the danger faced by COVID-19 is exposure, because that level of compensation, financial compensation, is truly immeasurable. What it is intended to reflect is a token of the appreciation felt by the Chesterfield Township Board and its residents for the courage and dedication demonstrated by the brave sworn officers of our police department. The proposed stipend amount was reached after much discussion. Relentless is a very good word. But what we have is a discussion about how much, how do we base the formula, what do we call it? Is it hazard pay or is it hero pay? And these relentless conversations can go on and on and on. And I suspect, unchecked, COVID-19 will be eradicated from the planet, and full-time politicians and bureaucrats, we can sit and talk all day about what we should do and could do. But our opportunity to take action is now. Police officers cannot arrest violent and dangerous combatants and suspects from a Zoom meeting. We have seen in our incident reports that we get on a regular basis some of the most horrific interpersonal, I guess is the diplomatic way of putting it, arrests that are taking place with combative. We have increased involvement with people who are struggling with mental illness, and I can assure you that when people go off the rails and the pressures that are on all of us now show themselves on the street with a violent suspect, and the only thing standing between them and your family is one of our officers, we get a pretty good deal out of our people. They're very, very committed. And this $1,100 is not something that the board should consider as a result of any pressure from any union on we deserve this or we're entitled to that. There's been some discussion, and my assurance is that I think Trustee DeMuynck has had a number of conversations from members of this particular patrol union and their board, where they're just simply grateful to live in a community where they are thought of by their board in such high esteem and high regard. There's been very little discussion about we think we should get this, we want that. This has been a board-driven initiative, and we have tried to put a number on it that is fair and consistent with what neighboring communities and cities and municipalities, pretty exhaustive search of what those numbers look like, puts the township proposed $1,100 in roughly the middle of the cohort. I'm comfortable with the absorption of this expenditure out of the line items that were identified in the motion. The stewardship of this budget has been meticulously managed by Director Kirsten, along with captains in both the police department and fire department. So Chief Miller, Captains McNair and Franks, along with Director Kirsten, point to me the expenditure of $49,500, which is the sum total of the $1,100 for all involved sworn, is also mitigated by the reduction in overtime expenditures associated with officers who are typically spending roughly 30 hours, man-hours of overtime in court waiting to testify or testifying. That expenditure has clearly been wiped from the general ledger, as it is not needed if the courts are closed. So the overall amount is really a token, as I indicated. It's long past due, and if given an ounce of opportunity tonight, I would like to expand this to the next level, which is the dispatchers. The dispatchers are also in a position to show up for work every day. They don't get to call in, they don't get to work from home, so I want to send a message to them and a number of other essential employees. This isn't the first, this isn't where I'm stopping, and I'm going to bring it one piece at a time. The first step tonight is the 45 sworn officers. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, if I may.
Trustee DeMuynck.
There was a lot of conversation that went into this. This started coming up probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. Trustee Joseph and I have been having some conversations over the last 2 weeks, and we all know Trustee Joseph and I over the years have had our differences and gone back and forth, but we sort of buckled down over the last week and a half and came up with a lot of different ideas. He had some, I had some, and so we came up with this proposed recommendation and brought it to the rest of the board for your discussion or your approval or whatever you see fit. And thank you, Trustee Joseph, for the conversations you and I have had for the last week and a half, sir.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend Trustee Joseph and Trustee DeMuynck for shepherding this process, the investigation they did, the background, and shepherding it through to the points here tonight. Thank you, gentlemen.
Any further? Trustee Fosberg. Hold on, let me unmute you. I still can't hear you. Try to unmute yourself. There you go.
I really am having a difficult time with this motion. I appreciate all of the work that our police department has had to deal with, and probably in a different way, just like all of our employees had to deal with things in a different way the past couple of months. And when I saw this, first of all, informed last Friday that this was going to be put on the agenda. It wasn't put on the agenda until yesterday, so really less than 24 hours to study this and look at it. And I have some questions that I find, to me, makes it, I can't vote for this tonight. I think that this deserves a little more, another look at. For example, what is the definition of hazard pay? This is being asked because it's hazard pay. Do we have a definition? Is that something that comes out of the contracts that we need to pay hazard pay when certain incidents arise? And then if that is the case, and what is the evidence of that? I mean, there's many anecdotes, many examples. I'm sure that we've heard some of them and heard about them. We can imagine what they might be. But I don't see a formal presentation with the numbers and the example. And then, is this amending the labor contract? How does this work? Seems to me this is something that should be resolved in labor contracts. And what are the details of this? Is this going to final average compensation? Things like that. So I'm not expecting any one person to answer them, but perhaps the part about the actual contract to our attorney or to our personnel director.
Supervisor, I'd be happy to answer some of those questions. It's the maker of the motion.
We'll come back after we go around.
Okay.
Now, Trustee or Captain, did you ask specific questions to the maker of the motion?
I would like the technical ones answered, regarding the labor contract, either by our attorney or by
Trustee Joseph, just remember this, that when I get asked 15 questions and I get cut off when I try to answer them. So this is how it should be done. You're the maker, you drafted this amendment.
Yes.
So Trustee Vosberg asked you a question about a letter of understanding and amending.
I'm going to first note your benevolence, and then I will answer the question.
Remember next time when I speak multiple times.
Duly noted, and I appreciate that. So if I can start with the first question. The issue of the contract, the issue of hazard pay.
No, excuse me, just a minute.
Okay.
I would like those issues of the hazard pay and the contracts addressed by our attorney or by our HR director. The technical questions.
So
You can take a shot.
You're the networks, can I get it? You can take it on what?
Take a shot at him. Take a shot at him, and I'll turn it over to
I appreciate that. So when I brought the motion forward, and I guess I'll just address this to the entire board, notwithstanding Trustee Vosberg, the issue of hazard pay or anything to do with the contract is resolved with a letter of understanding. The letter of understanding is secondary to the approval of the board. I don't want to put Attorney Siebert, but I did call for some clarification. He reminded me very quickly that he does not represent the township in labor issues, but he is quite familiar with this. So the information that I received from him was a general understanding. Procedurally, what happens is the board must approve the intent of the pay. The issue involving the contract and anything to do with the contract is resolved subsequent to the board's approval. And prior to bringing the motion forward, I spoke in great detail with HR Director Duchesne. I explained to him the process that I was going to bring about, and I asked about the issues involving a labor contract and the potential for impacting the labor contract. Luckily, HR Director Duchesne is very familiar with letters of understanding. His exact words to me were he has on his desk 3 sample letters of understanding that clarify the scope, the size of the stipend, the fact that it does not impact or open contract negotiations, and if by some chance the police officers union decides that they're not in favor of the conditions associated with receiving the $1,100, they can simply not sign the letter of understanding. The reason that we can't get anything done, Mr. Supervisor, is because we've layered this process up with so many bureaucratic steps. And it is not lost on me that somebody who talks about not understanding the hazard associated with this duty is appearing via Zoom.
I went back to you so that you could answer a question.
I'm trying to answer the question, and now you are interrupting because she specifically asked...
the question, and then I'm going to move on to Director Duchesne.
I'm just finishing. The question of what is the hazard is self-evident. As the trustee appears from the safety of her room, we have officers in the street. That is the hazard. So I hope that cleared it up for you. We're on the street arresting people. That's the hazard.
Director Duchesne. We lost Kathy for a second here.
Maybe a hanger over.
Director Duchesne. Can you hear me, Director Duchesne?
Yes, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can. Michelle, you might need to turn up the volume over there just a touch.
Steve, we got you. I got you.
We can hear you. Just a little bit light.
You have to, Steve, you have to turn off your...
The President. Okay. The labor contracts.
We hear you perfectly.
The present labor contracts do not have a special or hazardous pay clause in it, but as Trustee Joseph and Trustee DeMuynck described, their intent to provide the stipend is a board-driven discussion, and as I advised them that the best practice in this, and I'm sure that Township Attorney Siebert agrees, would be to enter a letter of understanding with the terms in it. Specifically, also as described, they would either choose to sign it and agree or not, and that's how we would proceed. The letter of understanding was discussed briefly with the Personnel Committee and the idea of proceeding at that point, so we have some background to it and anticipated the conversation. The process we would then follow is to put terms in it that I recommended would include the exclusion of this stipend from final average compensation, the reservation, and the distinguishment that this is a one-time activity and it's not setting a precedent, and that it be paid, and I suggested not by a specific date certain, even though we would use we would use all necessary efforts to get it done, but we would do it as soon as reasonably possible because the other personnel are working under similar strained circumstances because of it. So that was my response, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions board members may have.
Mr. Supervisor, do I still have the floor?
Yes, you do.
All right, thank you. I have never, ever negotiated a labor contract in public like this without first having seen something from the bargaining units and/or the labor attorney. This is so inappropriate. I'm not going to speak anymore, and I don't support this at this time, the way it's being handled. Thank you.
Clearly.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I've got some questions primarily for Director Duchesne. I know that you said, or you're maintaining that this doesn't set a precedent, but how doesn't it set a precedent? I'm confused as to why it wouldn't. I would certainly think it would, particularly with some other employees in the township who can also argue hazardous conditions. If that's in fact the reason for this, is the argument is that these particular employees are subject to some additional hazards or some additional conditions that would mandate some additional compensation for that. I'm thinking just off the top of my head, perhaps firefighters could make the same argument. It's very difficult for them to do their jobs. They can't save people if they're not touching them. Perhaps not on a daily basis, but certainly in exercising their duties. DPW as well, although they don't deal with necessarily individuals specifically, but they're certainly dealing with bodily fluids and even more awfulness than I would care to think about. I think they could also make the argument as well. So how do we respond? And I agree with Trustee Vosberg as well in terms of I don't like the method in which it's coming across. I would have preferred to see an LOU already, or at least some sort of written terms that we could have approved. I think this is very vague. I think it's arbitrary in terms of the amount. I understand how it was done, but I have some concerns about it. But primarily, if you could address the issue of how doesn't this set a precedent for the future, and how do we respond to other perhaps similarly situated, or not necessarily similarly situated, but how do we respond to other employees who could make the same claim of exposure to additional hazards?
Director Duchesne, that's you. And we can hear you if you speak.
In answering that, the statement that would be incorporated into the letter of understanding would be that this is it does not set precedents, and the terms and the reason which the board is offering this stipend is left to the device of the actual letter of understanding itself. In other words, we put a clause in that says, due to the state of emergency that's been issued by executive order of the governor. That's your reason. You can have more reasons, you can have less reasons, you virtually can have no reason. But when I speak to the setting precedent, I'm saying with that collective bargaining unit that it does not set up a new term that there will be hazard pay in all situations, in all executive orders. So that's a good question. That's specifically what I was referring to, is it does not set a precedent with that collective bargaining agreement, nor that collective bargaining group. Now, if the board determines that it sets a practice and you address others in similar or like manners, that would be a separate thing that we would certainly have to discuss other reasoning or other approaches the board may wish to take.
I think I'm going to move up to Treasurer Lafada and myself before we go around for a round, if there is a round two. Treasurer Lafada.
There's not only has our police department left the confines of their homes to come out into the township to do their daily jobs, there's other disciplines, other areas. There's clerical, there's building grounds, there's DPW. The risk is, nobody knew what the risk was. Every time you left their house to come into the workplace, there's a risk. It's probably the same reason why Trustee Vosberg is home and I'm here. She doesn't want to risk. I'm old enough to take that risk, but I don't expect to get compensated. But when people come in and they do an essential job that's required to keep the township running, then I feel that they took a risk. They should get some kind of compensation. Maybe not all equally. I think that the police department broke theirs down into hours worked. It would be the same thing for DPW and clerical and building and grounds. If they're in the workplace for 20 hours a week, then they should get some kind of compensation for those 20 hours. If people work from home, they got compensated. They don't deserve anything special. But if you came into the workplace, you put yourself at risk. And I hope, like my father said, you treat all your children equally. Thank you.
Quick one from me. My reservations with this item, and I think I might be one of the only ones up here, are not from a financial nature. I do not believe the expenditure that this specific item is requesting is, it's not the reason for the way I'm going to vote, which is going to be no on this item. I believe we can handle the $46,000 or $1,100 a person is laid out, and still keep reducing the millage rate, and still move toward paying back the legacy general fund loan. And I believe that because of the work that the employees, the amazing employees, and this team has done on the cost side and on the future revenue and expense trajectory that we're on. We clearly are in a good, strong financial position to be able to handle something like this. I will be voting no on this addendum at this time, and for different reasons. And those reasons are, for the last 3.5 years, I've been advocating for a one Chesterfield. Breaking down the barriers and the divisiveness and the me and the this team and the this team. The one Chesterfield with integrity as our foundation, with clear processes and procedures. This item, I think, divides our team. It undermines the mission of that one Chesterfield. I think as presented, it will reduce the morale of the other essential team members who are also forced to work in this new high-risk COVID environment. This expenditure is not reimbursable right now. We repeat that. It is not reimbursable. However, it might be reimbursable in a month, or in 2 months, or in 3 months, when the Federal Government CARES Act gets clarity from every state, every municipality, on what those funds can be used for. So municipalities, and I know a lot of them have done it and a lot of them haven't. A lot of big counties have done it and a lot of counties have not. The ones who do it now without that clarity are risking not knowing what may be reimbursed, and that is just not a good, responsible thing to do. 3, the bargaining unit contract amendments require a letter of understanding. The process with this one has got me a little shook up. They should be negotiated by the Chesterfield Township appointed bargaining team in an actual letter of understanding with the details, because the details are important in this, should be presented for the board for action. So at a minimum, I believe this item should be to direct either the HR department or the appointed Township Bargaining Committee, which is made up of myself, Clerk Barron, and Treasurer Lafata, to come back to the board with an actual letter of understanding. And that letter of understanding is what should be voted on and discussed in closed session and voted on. I'm proud of the entire Chesterfield team. I'm especially appreciative of the public safety unit. A along with all the other essential workers that have been sacrificing and have been going above and beyond, whether it's jumping in a live sewer or doing whatever it takes to get us through this pandemic. But this item as submitted, I can't support. It undermines the negotiation process. It divides the team. It picks favorites. It will drive a wedge between the various bargaining units, some within your own department. These people get it, these people don't. The expense is non-reimbursable or untimely. I think it needs to come back as a one Chesterfield solution with, I think I agree with exactly what Treasurer LaFaro laid out. We come back with your essential workers. This is the parameters. If you're doing it in the sewer and water business, the code enforcement business, and you're susceptible to this, then we all should get that reimbursement. And that's why I'm going to be a no tonight. I look forward to continuing this conversation as an entire family, and finding that solution. Trustee Joseph for round 2.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. And I'm going to take a pass on a lot of what you said, just in the spirit of recognizing your initial handling of the questions and how we go. But I would like to touch on a few. This idea of one Chesterfield, and I appreciate that, but we don't have the same salary for all employees. Everybody in the township makes a different rate. Why don't we have the same salary for everybody? Because I don't want to see divide among the bargaining units. I think we should all be at, I don't know, $50,000 a year and everybody makes the same salary. Of course we wouldn't do that because we recognize the obligations of different jobs are set, they're negotiated, and this idea that one comment regarding never in my day have we negotiated a labor contract in public. The fact of the matter is, not only will the person that made that comment be able to sleep safely tonight in the township because of the protection provided to her by the Chesterfield PD, but she can take comfort in knowing that she still hasn't, because this is not a renegotiation of the labor contract. And when you look at the municipalities that have approved them, the letter of understanding is secondary. The problem with bringing the MOU forward is that it gives people the opportunity to continue to talk as if they're writing a Disney monologue about how much they love and respect the police department when they do nothing but words. They don't need reinforcement that they're of gratitude. We had a letter received by this board, the negotiating team, the full-time board members, received a letter from the union asking to sit down and talk about it. He wasn't given back any opportunities to sit down with the negotiating team. And yes, I look forward to it, and I'm prepared to do it tonight, if you like, to go down the list, because Trustee DeMuynck and I had a very long conversation about, well, what about this group, and what about this group? And I have ideas and numbers for each of those groups, commensurate with a token recognition of the risk. Because if we think that $1,100 per sworn officer compensates them for the risk they face, we're kidding ourselves. We know that that's not what this is. It is a token. And so the risk associated with what I believe to be the next unit in line, which would be the dispatchers, and Clerk Berry raised the question, the firefighters. I'm going to take a pass on that one because I understand from Director Duchesne that we do have some signature issues that need to take place, and I don't foresee a conversation about a contract, anything, until we've closed that account. So just for the record, anybody that's interested in knowing my position on that, I'd like to see Director Duchesne come back with some signed, sealed, and delivered contracts. In terms of being able to go back with the negotiating team, how do we do that when the only member of the negotiating team that is here every day is Treasurer LaFata. I'm pretty comfortable getting a hold of you, Supervisor Acciavatti, and scheduling a meeting. But this idea that nobody knew the risk, I beg to differ, Treasurer LaFata. Trustee Berry knew the risk 3 years ago. She imposed a work-at-home quarantine order on herself 3 years ago. She's not here. How would the negotiating team possibly sit down and remedy this in a contract negotiation type way? The simple fact of the matter is it's not a contract negotiation. So talking about DPW jumping down a live sewer, I don't know what an inanimate sewer main, how it becomes live. I don't know if that's where we're keeping the COVID-19 that people are diving into, but it's hyperbole. It's not a real comparison to what the police department does. And the building department, Clerk Berry talking about exchanging of bodily fluids. I don't know what's going on with those electrical permits anymore, but I don't know how we're talking in that way. Nobody's exchanging bodily fluids in the building department. It's silly. It's nonsense. And that's what happens if we bring a contract to the board table and a letter of understanding and everybody chimes in with this kind of nonsense. We will have another 4 or 5 board meetings go by with no action. So I'm content to bring forward the first of many. And if tonight, if the support for the motion would like to continue my support, I'd expand it tonight and go $700 for the dispatchers right now.
Any further comments on the board? Clerk Berry.
I'd like to make sure that Trustee Joseph has completed his comments.
No, I haven't. So if there is an amendment to my motion, I would like to make it, and that is I would like to include in this stipend $700. No, I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to leave the motion as it is because it would be unfair to Trustee DeMuynck. He wasn't the second on the motion, and I know where he stands and what he supports right now. So I don't want you guys to kill it for the cops just yet. So I'm going to dial that back and keep my composure, and I'll bring the dispatchers next board meeting.
Almost got
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple points of clarification. I mentioned the building department. I'm not sure where that came from. I've also got a couple of other suggestions, perhaps, of how we negotiate this. Perhaps we discuss this much as we did last week in our executive meeting when all of us were there. Myself, Supervisor Acciavatti, Treasurer LaFata, and our human resource team, Director Duchesne, as well as both of his HR manager, Burke, as well as Michelle Brandenburg, their clerical assistant as well. And we were all there, and I guess I'm a bit confused because, and I know that we were the only ones in the room, however, all of us who were there do know that I was the only one who happened to mention some of the hazards and perhaps where there was some validity to this item. Treasurer LaFata was heavily against it. So was Supervisor Acciavatti. Supervisor Acciavatti has enunciated quite well why. I'm interested to know Treasurer LaFata's about face, a 180-degree difference. That's curious to me. There's some reason why his absolutely no turned to an absolutely yes. I think that perhaps that's some good data or information he would like to share with us. From my perspective, I wasn't opposed to the concept. However, I do take offense, and to a certain extent, I take some issue with how much is it going to take to prove my loyalty to our police? 1,000? 4,000? 10,000? I think to question Trustee Vosberg's.
Were you asking me for a question?
I just think that nobody interrupts you.
No, she asked you, looked at me and asked me a question.
I'm sorry. I didn't look over there and I didn't ask a question. But
That's all.
I'm sure that's your intent. But I would like to speak. So to suggest that somehow not supporting this item means not supporting police or being anti-police, I think is highly offensive. It would be just as offensive as suggesting perhaps that people who want to make the township a gun-free zone are anti-Second Amendment. It was very clear that they were not, but they were concerned about the safety of of the people who work here, and I took that argument on its face. I would suggest that those of us who perhaps are not going to support this item tonight has simply nothing to do with the fact that these are police officers. Has everything to do with being concerned about things that we've talked about. I don't believe it's necessary to use inflammatory language. I don't think it's necessary to bully. I don't think it's necessary to try to mischaracterize what board members are thinking or what they're suggesting or what their motives are. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we can have this discussion without that. And the reasons why I can't support this item is as I've stated. And that is, I have concerns that we're operating outside the contract. I would have liked to have seen a letter of understanding with some terms. Just Director Duchesne saying, well, we're going to put this in and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I can appreciate his intent. And I can appreciate the fact that he really would do those things. But as a fiduciary of this community, I would like to see that, and I'd like to make my decision based on that. So, my other concerns about precedent setting as well, I don't think have been adequately addressed to my satisfaction. I think that there are various other employees that we have under other contract collective bargaining agreements that could very well make a case here. We have not had, and this item has not had any vetting by our labor attorney, has not had any vetting by anyone other than the folks that they wanted to talk to. So, the executive committee did discuss this a week ago. And it was very clear when we left that meeting that for various reasons, not one of the people in there supported it. Quite frankly, the most strident advocate was Director Duchesne. But of the 3 full-time officials who were in that room, not one said we want to move forward with it for various reasons. And everyone had their reasons, and they've articulated them in the memo. So, yes, we could discuss this in terms of a contract and negotiation very easily because we've in fact done that already. So, I just wanted to make those clarifications known. And I think I'm in an ongoing way where everybody is very sensitive to this and everybody is sensitive to the entire environment that's been created by this boogeyman virus that has been used as a fear-mongering tactic, and a lot of people have some real concerns about that as well as the actual impacts of it. I think that we should proceed in a manner which doesn't include inflammatory language, which doesn't include pitting one group against another, and which doesn't include questioning the motivations and the loyalties of anybody on this board. I find that highly offensive and non-productive. I do like Supervisor Acciavatti's idea and approach, and I would support bringing something forward that considers every member, every employee who works for Chesterfield Township, look at their levels of exposure, and see if in fact there's some additional compensation that needs to be considered. I think that's a reasonable approach. However, just throwing something together and then trying to push people up against a virtual wall here and say, if you don't support this, you're clearly sending a message that you don't support some of our employees, that's offensive. And it's wrong and it's incorrect. Because I happen to know each and every board member here and have worked with some of you for 8 years, and you happen to know that none of you think that way. Every single one of you are supportive of this community, and that's why you put yourselves out there to run for office, and that's why you're elected to be sitting here. So I just would like to let that be the end of my comments, Mr. Supervisor, and I appreciate the time.
Online, folks, let's go to Trustee Vosberg, Trustee DeMuynck. We're on round 2 here. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would encourage the people to please vote this down tonight, bring back something else that we have had a week to look at, and that also would be vetted in a way that we can understand what this memo of understanding would look like. We would have whatever closed session or appropriate discussion to come up with the terms. I would just like to quote somebody who spoke earlier. Based on the discussion we've had tonight and perhaps future things that want to be brought up, we don't know what the true cost is.
Trustee DeMuynck, if you have a round 2.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I was unaware when all this came up that the 3 full-timers had a discussion regarding this. I had heard 1 or 2, but I didn't know all 3 of you guys were in. Now there seems to be a discussion about the legality and LOU that I'm not fully aware of, and Mr. Siebert was not our attorney. So if we need to go back to our bargaining team at this point, then maybe we should wait. If we can go in closed session and then all 7 of us discuss it, I have no problem doing that with my other board members if that's the way you guys feel, and that's the way it appears that it's coming out tonight. So I have no problem in tabling this until we can go in closed session and all 7 of us discuss it together then.
Mr. Supervisor.
I'll give you a little bit of latitude, but be short because I haven't been done with round 2 yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll be brief. There is no confusion, and I think Treasurer LaFata can speak to himself. There was an email that came out on Friday that I spoke immediately to Treasurer LaFata about. Trustee DeMuynck called me because he got a copy of the email as well. The email addressed the concerns that were, I believe, addressed in the executive summary, which was Treasurer LaFata's belief that there are more individuals that are entitled and deserving of some additional resources because of the hazard they face as a result of the coronavirus. Trustee DeMuynck called me, and I think he wanted to make sure that we had everything covered, and there were no outstanding issues. There remain no outstanding issues. Our HR director has very clearly told me, and I believe the executive members, that the LOU is a very simple process. He has executed them many times. He has 3 samples depending on the board's prerogative. The township attorney who is present tonight does not represent the township in the contract negotiations, but very clearly is familiar with this type of letter of understanding or letter of acceptance. This is not a complicated issue. There is no extreme vetting that needs to happen. And the problem with the continued discussion, which I understood when I spoke to you, Trustee DeMuynck, earlier this afternoon, that you explained these things to Trustee Vosberg in your conversation with her earlier. Everybody knows that this has been discussed for months. What we do is we come out politically and we say how much we love the police department, and then we go behind the scenes and we look to kill it. And there is nothing personal about saying to somebody who doesn't come to work, you're not available to negotiate. That is, I'm sorry, did I say something?
I skipped Trustee Anderson and Trustee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you said this was going to be very, very quick.
Sorry, as I'll do is I'll submit it to
I'll get back to you after.
Okay. No, I don't want to say all that.
You'll answer very, very quick.
If you'll come back to me,
I skipped some.
I'm sorry. If you'll come back to me, I'll reserve the remainder of mine. But what I'm anticipating is...
After round 5.
No, I'm anticipating is a very quick, either a motion to table or a motion to call a question or some, nonsense that happens, and then you get your 4th vote back in line.
Don't worry.
I see him slipping.
I'm going to get you real fired up here in a second when it gets to me. Treasurer LaFata or Trustee Anderson. Sorry about that. That was supposed to be very, very quick.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I think it's all the support, the legalities of it, contractually, everything else, well explained, beat to death. And I see nothing but the red herring being drug again across the floor. Let's get on with the vote, the 4-3, and get it over with. You don't want it. You don't want to reward these people. It's been explained that we're going to be looking at the other employees that are in harm's way. There should be some compensation during these times for them. But the majority does not want this to go through, so let's just get the vote and get the night over with.
Treasurer LaFata.
Director Duchesne sent an email out asking the board their position on paying a bonus or stipend. And I think I was the only one to actually answer that. I tried to answer it very honestly. Actually, I started with, it was a loaded question. And yeah, there was a meeting, an executive meeting, but after thinking about it and after being asked for my position, I rethought it, and I said, well, if the police department's going to get one, in fact, I was very sarcastic and asked everybody if they ever read Animal Farm, but if there was a risk and there was a reason for a bonus, I thought everyone in the township should get one. And I rethought my position because I have my staff coming in every day, not working from home on their computers, performing a task to keep the township running. So based on that fact, I would support having some kind of stipends for, if it starts with the police department, that's fine. I will petition for clerical, I'll petition for DPW, I'll petition for the other departments. But just because there was a discussion in an executive meeting, I've been there before when somebody's come to the table to vote and they flipped for political reasons. So I don't know what, our clerk's getting all up about, because I've seen her flip at the last minute because it's politically correct. And I put that in my response that I CC'd everybody on the township board. I never got a response back. I never saw anybody else respond to what their position was. And I thought I was very honest about it. So I have no qualms in supporting this. I don't have any qualms in making it happen tonight, because if we just drag it out, by the time we finish with clerical or DPW, it'll be in the next year. So I think we just need to get this over with and vote on it.
Is that a motion to call the question?
I have a question
Trustee DeMuynck.
to Attorney Siebert, please. Is this an item that can be discussed in closed session, because we're going to be talking about one union or all the unions, yes or no?
That's a good question. Initially, my answer would be no, because the Open Meetings Act allows you to go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations. You're not collectively bargaining with anybody that I know of, but I'm not privy to any of the background on this particular item. If you're in the process of negotiating with the union over a letter of understanding which would formalize the issue that you're now discussing, that would be permitted in closed session. But it takes two to tango to go into closed session. You have to be in active negotiations. If this is a unilateral decision by the board to offer a stipend to one or more unions, that's not collective bargaining, and in my view, that would not be permitted in closed session. But the caveat is I'm not privy to whether this has been discussed with any of your bargaining reps, and they may very well agree to do that.
Any further follow-up? Trustee DeMuynck?
I'm losing Bob. I didn't hear the end of his answer. So I heard him going back and forth, whether it's negotiated or unnegotiated. I wasn't picking up anything on my end.
Scott, it depends whether or not you're involved in active collective bargaining negotiations. If you are, you may go into closed session to discuss the substance of those negotiations. But I don't know whether there's been any give and take with the unions on these issues. If there have been, then you can go into closed session. If there have not been, and the contract is already in place, it's signed, sealed, delivered, and it's being implemented, if this is a unilateral action by the board, you cannot go into closed session just unilaterally to talk about what you might do for them. It's got to be in the context of negotiations.
Oh, okay.
Supervisor, as the maker of the motion, could I just clarify one?
Really quick one. The intent of the stipend
has nothing to do with collective bargaining. My motion for clarification is to authorize Mr. Duchesne to enter into a take it or leave it letter of understanding with the union. My communication with the union official is we're not asking for anything, we're not counter-offering anything. This is a take it or leave it stipend provided to them by the board, and there is no collective bargaining entanglement behind this motion at all.
Clerk Barry. we're going to follow up to the DeMuynck question still.
Director Duchesne, my understanding is that there has been some negotiation on this item, either between board members or yourself and their agent and or their rep. Is that incorrect or is that correct? And this is my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong.
There has not been any negotiation with the business agents on my part or human resources. Other parties may have discussed it, obviously have. The only thing we did receive is a copy of a letter provided to the public safety director that he relayed to us for a meeting with the board. And that's what we discussed, as you mentioned, in our prior personnel meeting. But there's been no active negotiations on our part of any type.
The trustee, we'll go trustee Anderson then.
Yes, sir, I'd like to call a question.
Is there support?
Yes, support.
Motion to call the question by trustee Anderson, supported by trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, please call the roll. That is a non-debatable motion. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye. Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
No.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
No.
Clerk Berry.
Aye.
Motion to call the question passes. We have a motion by trustee Joseph, supported by trustee Anderson, to approve item 8B as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Trustee DeMuynck.
I'm going to vote aye on it because of the discussion I had, but there's going to be some reservations after.
Say that again?
What's his vote?
I'm voting aye, but there's going to be some reservations that we're going to have to go into discussions after with Trustee Joseph.
You're voting aye on the motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Treasurer LaFatta.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
No.
Clerk Berry. No.
Motion passes. Item 9, our public comment. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes, and Clerk Berry will check the computer as well for any electronically submitted comments. State your name and address for the record.
Joe Cage, 7. It's on. Okay. Watching.
Press the buttons.
Okay.
Something's happening here. What'd you do?
Thank you. Watching this whole episode, looks like everybody's divided on who gets the bonus or what it is, and that's what I was going to suggest, but you didn't ask for public comments before you voted. What I was going to suggest is just delay this thing till we're through this, maybe August or somewhere in there, and then on the whole personnel that work in this township, say, all right, you brought us through this COVID-19 after 4 months or whatever. You did a great job. Some of you worked from home, some of you didn't. And on that basis, say, I'm going to give a bonus to everybody based on a percentage of their pay or something. To me, that's the best way to get around whether the police department gets it, whether the fire department gets it, whether the treasurer's department gets it. Get everybody all on board at once and say thank you for what you did during this time. Be a simple way to handle it. Wouldn't make any enemies within our department, distrust between anybody. This whole episode created a lot of dissension, I think. Could have been handled a lot better. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and was basically, finally, after, 4 years, and allow write-in questions to be answered on the agenda. But I wonder what happened. I wrote in some questions on when they did the Hooker Road project. Nobody read my questions or answered my questions during that meeting. A little disappointed that happened. I hope it keeps going, that whatever questions people send in, they do get answered. The other thing I wanted to talk about was at the last meeting, Clerk Berry and her comments at the end basically intimidated that Governor Whitmer was getting her hair done somewhere and nobody else was able to get their hair done. And so she was going up to Lansing to see if she could get everybody back to work. And I guess she joined the rest of the gun-toting people and everybody else with their rebel flags and Nazi swastikas up there. Kind of disappointing to see that happen. Essentially, when things could have been done for the people in this township without having to go up there. I'm sure there are people in this township that could have used some help and guidance or whatever. And you go up there, nothing happens in this township. Like Trustee Joseph says, you don't work maybe a couple hours a week. But to go up there on our time, in our pay, to do something for God knows what the people in this township didn't even ask for, I don't think that was proper. I think you should apologize for it and maybe get your act together and start working here. Thank you.
Years. I'd just like to say thank you. We're going to continue to serve the community with pride.
Mr. Supervisor, we have received an item earlier today. It did not specifically say it was for this meeting, but it was addressed to me and it did say to please read it as a notice. So in order to just be sure, in the event that it was meant for the meeting, I feel I should read this into the public comment. And this was submitted by Kelly Weisberg on Ratchet Lane. Please read notice. Dear Ms. Berry, below are critically important questions, evidence, facts, and my notice of terms to you in your public and private capacities. Transmission of this notice has been electronically recorded. Thank you for reading this notice, sent to you in good faith and without ill intent. Please respond ASAP. In this current crisis, measures have been undertaken which are harming me against my consent. Further malicious actions are being threatened against me and against the rule of law itself. A central example is the TRACE Act, H.R. 6666, proposing $100 billion in 2020 to create an industry of contact tracers, a ubiquitous fascist surveillance network to enforce testing and apparently to grant the authority to remove people from their dwellings. This action is egregious, and for federal officials, I ask you to immediately stop this bill. For all officials, stop all anti-constitutional legislation and pass laws, preserve all constitutional rights and the rule of law in this country. Plain statement of facts. I have inalienable rights recognized by the original U.S. Constitution that cannot be superseded by any agenda nor be removed from me. I understand these laws of the land to be active and currently valid. If this is not the case, please send verification in writing within 72 hours. B, my unalienable rights are being harmed by agendas implemented by oath-sworn elected officials, corporate executives, and or non-elected officials, collectively agents of harm. These include, without limitation, my free rights to speak, travel, do commerce, work, assemble, and be free of surveillance without warrant. A threat of medical procedures or experimentation without my consent, threats of punitive detention, violence, or assault for noncompliance. C, my unalienable rights are not conditional, i.e. subject to proving I am not contagious nor submitting to surveillance nor anything that would cause me harm, properly called extortion. Notice of terms. Effective immediately and until each of the below questions are answered to my satisfaction, let it be known throughout all jurisdictions and dimensions that A, I do not consent to being harmed by any imposition of quarantine or restriction on my right to assemble, work, travel, speak, or do commerce. B, I do not consent to being told to live in fear, nor made to wear a mask, nor being mandated an allowable proximity to others. C, I do not consent to any offer of forced medical experimentation or testing, nor forced medical procedure, i.e. vaccine or a substance delivered by air, water, or other means without my knowledge and consent, nor exposure to radiation from 4G, 5G wireless deployments, nor being tracked by any technology or biometric device on or adjacent to my body. D, I hereby accept your oath of office as your sworn statement that binds you to uphold my constitutional rights, protect me from harm once noticed, and to liability when acting with negligence or without duty of care. E, I reserve all of my rights to pursue remedy for all harm and threats of harm which may constitute criminal assault and or tort caused or contributed by agents of harm. I intend to seek remedy and lawful justice unless and until the stated harmful actions cease and desist. If you do not agree with my lawful ability to state and realize these claims and terms, please make your case. 5 minutes? I think so. I think I've got about 2 minutes left. Please make your case in writing within 72 hours. If I receive no response from you, or if you offer any response that violates the supremacy of the original U.S. Constitution and you do not disapprove my claim that the U.S. Constitution is active and valid, I will deem you to be in agreement and will proceed accordingly. Questions and evidence. Why are doctors asked to record any cause of death as CV-19 even in the absence of confirmatory testing? 2, why are hospitals paid $13,000 for each claimed CV-19 patient and $39,000 for each ventilator request? Why are testing methods being used which do not confirm CV-19 and which the test inventor said should not be used to identify a specific disease? Why are goats and even fruit apparently testing positive for CV-19? Why is the media suppressing a study showing CV-19 may be up to 50 to 85 times less fatal than was thought? Why are hospitals empty of CV-19 as a legitimate pandemic? Why do you not tell us social distancing costs us $2 trillion, contributes to depression and suicide, and will cause the second wave? Why is 5G being fast-tracked in our cities and schools during lockdown? Why are the economy, jobs, and freedoms being destroyed, allegedly to save people, while alcohol, cigarettes, and junk food kill 21 million people a year and are still allowed? Why is Bill Gates, who is neither an elected official nor a medical professional, 30 seconds left, and I'll stop the comments at this time, saying vaccines are the final solution when vaccines can reduce immunity, increase disease, and or harm or kill us? Why did Bill Gates say eventually we will have some digital certificates to show who's recovered or been tested recently, or when we have a vaccine who's received it? Why did Bill Gates say we are talking genetically modified organisms and we are injecting them into little kids' arms, just shoot them right in the vein? Why does Microsoft own a patent for a cryptocurrency system using microchipped humans? Why are doctors censored for reporting that their CV-19 patients recovered from vitamin C? Why are YouTube and Google allowed to censor videos from hundreds of credible experts expressing grave concerns? Why has mask wearing been forced from the Surgeon General and WHO and even Dr. Fauci say not to wear them? Why does government and Hollywood co-fabricate stories intended to control our thoughts and behavior? With this evidence of how we are being gravely misled, can you please respond with valid, justifiable reasons why I should surrender any of my unalienable constitutional rights? Did you not take your oath with integrity? I am a grown woman able to make my own decisions for my well-being. I don't need the government stepping in as my mommy.
Any further public comments? No, hold on one second. Public comments?
Yes.
Yes. Did you have the public comments go through the clerk's office to an email?
I would like to bring to your attention a public comment in addition to the public comment.
One of the ones that went through the clerk's office.
We have a resident that has contacted me that is unable to get through to the clerk's office, was unable to get through last time, and is unable to get through this time.
There's an email there. So we'll move up to board comments. Trustee Joseph, you mentioned the resident comments. There's no limit on these, so you can speak.
Okay, fair enough. Are we to board comments? I'm sorry.
Do we have any further public, let's do this. Any further public comments? Okay, Trustee Joseph, you can speak to your board comments, and if you have a public comment that's not an official public comment, it goes through the website. But go ahead, your comments.
I'm confused terribly because I received the same notice that Clerk Berry read into the record. It looks as though she made a lot of friends when she was up protesting the governor's haircut. I received that exact notice. I believe it may be part of an organization because verbatim from not only Ms. Weisberg, but also from a gentleman in the township by the name of Raymond Paschal. Mr. Paschal's address, according to the correspondence, is 48504 Sugarbush. He's a Chesterfield resident. Aside from the closing about the government being his mommy, it was the exact same correspondence. So congrats on your pen pals, Clerk Berry. The comment that I received was from a resident by the name of Lynn Fennell. Ms. Fennell resides at 50135 Sass. Ms. Fennell indicated that she's had difficulty tonight hearing the meeting. Apparently the sound is not going so well for those residents at home. She indicates that she's having trouble getting her comments read, and she fears that perhaps it may have to do with the content of her message. But this is her message, and I will read it unchanged. My name is Lynn Fennell. I've been a Chesterfield Township resident for 22 years. I've just begun to watch the township meetings, and I find them very interesting. I do not like the way some board members conduct themselves. I'm very offended with Clerk Berry's caustic remarks about the governor on April 28, 2020. I support the governor in trying to save lives. I don't like her stating that she was attending the March on Lansing a few weeks ago. She boasted that she was attending the march on April 30th as well. The governor is fully aware of the business's sufferings. I'm sure she's also aware of the strain on the unemployment system. It wasn't meant to handle the volume. I'm sure that some problems are also caused by unfamiliarity of the system by the users as well. I didn't like her comments on all of the things, especially the governor's hair. That was simply childish. I want you to know that seeing these types of responses are not flattering to the township on YouTube. Clerk Berry should try to create a respectful civil atmosphere during this trying time. Clerk Berry mentioned that people are looking to Chesterfield Township for leadership, not this leadership. If you would like to support local businesses, how about tax abatement instead of paddle parks? How about money to give to local businesses instead of township office renovations? How about lowering of water assessments? Most businesses could use that, especially restaurants. How about township labor and machinery to maintain struggling businesses, landscapes, or even maintenance of their buildings for a while? I conclude with wondering why nothing was mentioned about all the hard work that township residents are doing, staying home, helping their neighbors, making sure their parents have what they need, calling friends, holding Zoom meetings to keep in touch and support one another. That is the press that's needed, not some unsafe march on Lansing. I look forward to hearing about the efforts to help businesses safely here, not marching in Lansing. Again, that was Ms. Lynn Fennell. There's a lot of comments that we receive talking with fellow board members. I don't typically read the comments I receive, on Facebook or bumping into somebody at the grocery store. This particular resident indicated that the channels associated with getting her word were not being received. I'll try again to direct her to the township website, but she's not the only individual that has expressed some difficulty with knowing where the meetings are, how to communicate, and how to be heard. And really, it's been a troubling thing for me since I've been on the board, making sure that our residents are heard, and I appreciate people even coming to meetings. And when we can't, because of social distancing and some of the stay-at-home orders, trying to make amendments to allow more people to be heard is, I think, something we're obligated to do. So I was happy to read Ms. Fennell's comments. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I do understand her concern. The issue tonight that was addressed, one comment about, maybe it would have been better to go into a session and talk about it as a board. Simply put, that can't happen. It won't happen. It doesn't happen. The team, if you will, is a very exclusive members-only club. Tonight, you saw one member of, you saw a board member come over and vote for the support of our police department tonight. I reached out to Trustee DeMuynck. Most of the time, we don't see eye to eye on the issues, and we are not in agreement. This was an area that I think our support and love of the Chesterfield Police Department was something we share in common, and I think that's why I had his support. I know Trustee Anderson has always supported the police department. Talking with Treasurer Lafata, his support of the police department is unwavering. Friday, he also wanted to use the momentum that was being gained with the support of the police department to recognize other individuals who do take on risk. Not everybody can work from home. And to that end, the exercise that I wanted to do, and again, I want to apologize to anybody who thought that this was a little disjointed. I adopted the protocol and the procedure that was afforded me by the voters that put me in office. Now, when I arrived on the board, there became a whole different set of rules. There's all kinds of committees and clubs and organizations, and they do very important things. They have very important titles. I don't know what some of them are. But we're genius, is all I can tell you. If you don't believe me, ask Supervisor Acciavatti. They're just brilliant. Unfortunately, I'm not going to get in line and navigate endless bureaucratic committees, because the true reality is, if 4 elected officials, if 4 people on this board agree on a particular agenda item, you have action. So I don't have time to wait for Clerk Berry to come out of quarantine. I don't have time to submit my application for membership in the Rapid Recovery team and be part of the color-coded playbook with all kinds of glitter. I don't have that. I do have time to sit down and have a meaningful conversation, and I made time last Tuesday. I take time off from my job where I go to work every day. A little different than some other people's jobs here, but I go to work every day. And in order to meet township officials, I have to take time from that, take vacation time, personal time, and I have to work late at night or early in the morning. I had that conversation on Tuesday. I saw the chart that we were privileged to hear. I'm in a better position to express my full dissatisfaction and frustration in a room with Treasurer Lafata and Supervisor Acciavatti. It was a private conversation, and I'm not going to share all of the the spiritedness of that conversation. But the problem that we continue to have over and over and over again is this concept of team. But there's a lot of I's. There's a lot. Look what I did with OPEB. You're going to hear that a lot. OPEB is now up to 86%, and it was once at 73. And I. It's very easy to do a lot of I's when your property values are going up and you're paying more taxes. Anybody can manage that. You just to say, I brought the OPEB up to 86%. There'll be crickets next year because that's dependent on the stock market. It's heavily connected to the stock market. The fact of the matter is we've cut our annual contributions to OPEB. We're not putting in the same amount. Had we put in the same amount, team, could say that our OPEB is 100% funded. Wouldn't that be great? But we're directly tied to the stock market, as Treasurer LaFata pointed out. There's no heroic management. We didn't get that OPEB establishment because the creation of the Rapid Recovery Team, and we put glitter all over our workbooks and passed them out and called ourselves something else in different titles. We didn't get that. There's the stock market. So we want to have real discussions about how to help the real people that do all of the heavy lifting. Stop talking about the team and the gratitude and the one Chesterfield, because that is not anything they can take to the Chase Bank or TCF. And when somebody puts their life on the line and they sign up to do it because they took an oath, and then the COVID-19 comes along, and you say, well, hey, listen, I'm a clerk here in the township, and I come in every other Friday to work 4 hours, and there's an equal amount of risk I have, you're just full of beans. That's just garbage. That's not accurate. If we were really going to do something tonight, and unfortunately, I say this to the dispatchers in our township first, you were supposed to be part of this. The negotiation process, unfortunately, did not afford me the ability to bring a motion that was inclusive of the dispatchers. I barely got sworn officers. I'm grateful for Trustee DeMuynck's support, but I was a little worried there for a while. It wasn't looking so good. It was starting to look like a soup sandwich on me. But we got it done, and I'm sure he'll be on, hopefully he's not on an apology tour tomorrow with Supervisor Acciavatti, and asking for forgiveness, because he did the right thing tonight. We did the right thing. It could have been done better procedurally. I wish it had been, but there was no option afforded to me. So to anybody who watched this and thought it looked pretty disjointed, it was ugly, and I knew exactly what I was going to get. I predicted it. I wrote it down. There'll be some complaint about a contract, and this is outrageous, and it hasn't been vetted. The simple truth of the matter is they were never getting a bonus. They were never getting a bonus. They were getting a lot of lip service. As I said in the executive summary, lip service is over. We brought an action item forward. We found 4 votes, and Trustee DeMuynck held. He held. And I'm proud of him for standing strong tonight, and I hope he would do it more often, because we got another vote coming up on the dispatchers. I'm going to bring that in 2 weeks, Trustee DeMuynck, so steel yourself. Be ready to go. Tell the other 3 that you're an independent guy, and you're going to support the people that support you. And we'll come back and we'll do it again in 2 weeks for the dispatchers. And Treasurer LaFata, if you got something to say about the brave people that come into work in your office every day, I'm all ears on that one too. And Clerk Barry, if you decide to come to work in the next month and you got some people in your department, I'll be supporting that too. Sorry, ramped over. I do have one note that I would like to close on that was very special to me and a number of members of this community that occurred last week. As many of you know, my friend, our friend, Dylan Riker, is a young man who was sworn in. He will not get the bonus. I will confirm with his parents that Dylan Riker will unfortunately not get the $1,100 bonus because he's ceremonially sworn in. I'll check with our labor council on that, but I don't think he'll be waiting for it. But Dylan Riker, at the age of 9, was sworn into the Chesterfield Police Department after it was determined that his lifelong ambition was to be a patrolman, to be an officer for our township. Dylan was diagnosed with brain cancer, and tumor disorder that impacts his central nervous system. And Dylan is a one-in-a-million kind of kid. And from the time he was sworn in, and is 9 years old, he's attended as many Friends of Chesterfield Police events with me. He's been side by side at the open house. He calls me through the pandemic several times, and he just talks about, I hope they don't cancel the police open house. He loves to volunteer, and he broke his middle school's single-year volunteer community service award and was recognized by the Friends of Chesterfield Police as their volunteer of the year. Last week, Dylan turned 16 years old. I reached out to Director Kirsten, I reached out to Fire Chief Miller, and I know that it is not the practice in the township to afford personnel and equipment for birthday parties, and I understand that that has been the policy that the director has applied to. It was broken last week on Tuesday for Dylan Riker, who is an amazing young man, and I'm so proud to know him and his family. And I was so proud to see the 100-plus cars that poured down his street and the fire trucks and Director Kirsten's leadership reaching out to our partners at MedStar and having our CEO, Colby Miller, make arrangements to bring the MedStar flight team in. And the parade that went down Dillon Street was led by the MedStar helicopter. It was an amazing sight, and he hasn't stopped talking about it. And that, to me, is the benefit of this community. It's a wonderful community, and without the police department, there is no township. It's just that simple. And my support remains with you, and my support remains with all of you in the Chesterfield Police Department. And I'm sorry I couldn't deliver bonuses to all, stipends to all, but I haven't stopped trying. I'm going to work and see if Trustee DeMuynck will be with me again in 2 weeks, and I'll bring that motion forward for some more of you. But thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. First thing, I do appreciate the board majority that acknowledged our sworn members out there with this stipend that was provided tonight. To one of our board members, I'm under tremendous pressure. I have that feeling, and just my own opinion, you crossing over and making this possible. Again, my opinion, I think you demonstrated a lot of moral courage tonight. I respect you for that. I know you were troubled. It was obvious, but I respect you. It's just my opinion. Mr. Kadish brought up an interesting point, looking at the other employees here that may be in harm's way too. And we've kind of beat the drum that we're looking at some type of stipends for those individuals too. I know perhaps might be a little easier. I know the supervisors mentioned several times that a future stimulus act from, or a bill from Washington may have some monies earmarked for that. With that, I'll withhold any further comments. Thank you.
Trustee DeMuynck or Trustee Vosberg?
I got no comment.
Trustee Vosberg.
I have some comments. First of all, I voted no.
Try to speak up a little bit. Okay, maybe back up on the volume and touch. We'll turn it back down once we speak again. Go ahead, Kathy.
I voted way back at the beginning of the meeting. We voted on the agenda, and I voted no. And the reason I voted no is for the last 4 agendas, there has been an addendum on there that has been added at the very last minute. And it involves money being spent or given away by the township. I have no problem with any of the items that were brought forward, but we cannot, in good conscience and in good faith, talk about these things that haven't been vetted by the proper finance department, and that we haven't had time to look at, and that the public hasn't had time to look at. It's like, in my opinion, when they go on at the last minute like that, it's something that hasn't ever been discussed before. It appears to be we're trying to hide something. We're putting it on at the last minute. Another thing is I'm going to be submitting an agenda item to change our rules that board comments cannot last for more than 5 minutes by each speaker. To have something go on and on past 5 minutes is not a good use of the citizens' time as they're listening to these meetings. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFleur.
Like I said before, I think that everybody that left their house that made a risk, police department, 911, the DPW, clerical, they should all get something. I can kind of perceive what's probably going to happen. Not really sure if there's going to be anything moving forward. I hope there is, but I'm pretty proud of my employees and my staff. I'm very proud that they supported me through this and left their homes and took a risk. And I will guarantee them, if the board doesn't approve something, I will take it out of my own pocket and I will compensate them. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm going to keep my comments very brief. Trustee Gosper, under 5 minutes, if I can. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just simply not going to respond to any comments that I don't feel are township business. I don't settle personal political agendas at the board table. It's not what I'm about. There's a certain level of decorum that was expected of us as office holders. Some people adhere to that and others don't feel that's necessary. So I have no problem discussing anything with any resident or anyone here who has any concerns, any member of the public about anything that may have been mentioned specifically to or about me or my department or what we produce here for our taxpayers. Nor do I have any problem discussing any of my votes that I took tonight with anyone who has any questions, legitimate questions about them. And I would invite anyone who has any questions, concerns, or issues about anything that you've heard tonight or at any of these meetings to reach out to me via email, phone. All of that is publicly available online. If you would like to meet in person, if you're willing to do that, I am willing to do that. I am not afraid to do that. Clearly, a line of communication, multiple lines of communication are open with not only myself, but my entire staff. My deputy offered to put her personal cell phone number online after she had, quite frankly, gotten sick and tired of hearing about how we weren't responding, which was completely false. Completely false. I don't have an issue with people attacking me. I do have an issue with them attacking my staff and the work that they do. We have not had one hiccup or issue that we've been made aware of until now, and I will be contacting that resident who had an issue with getting through to us. We are not aware of any service issues or related concerns since we have had to change the way we do business since COVID-19. But we will be reaching out to her. I will be reaching out to her personally. So if there are any other concerns, I would just simply, again, not waste any more time in that, other than to say that the service delivery from the clerk's department, as far as I'm concerned, has been exemplary. And we are, in fact, writing the SOP on how this should be done based on the experience that we have had, and I'd be happy to share that with anyone who's interested in knowing that information. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Rewinding back about an hour when I was getting ready to speak, and I let Trustee Joseph have a back and forth, and then I opened it up out of respect to give Anderson round 3, and then a call to question came. So what we just had is a very, very important item that wasn't even close to being vetted and handled properly. So rewinding, Trustee Joseph, I think I said, you're not going to like what I have to say. And then I relented and let you spoke, and then I relented over here, and you weren't going to like what I have to say. So, and right now, you're not going to like what I have to say.
I want to apologize for that. I wasn't trying to cut you off.
Either way, I'm just letting you know you're not going to like what I have to say. My experiences for the last 3.5 years sitting in this position and in this chair has led me to the following conclusion. This is my opinion, and they're mine. Anything that Trustee Joseph brings to this board is tainted with an ulterior motive. It is not done with the best intent of the citizens, the employees, or whatever group he is attempting to push the agenda through. This goes back all 3 years. From my opinion, anything pushed has got another goal, another objective, another reason for doing that. This isn't just out of the sky. It's item after item after item and after item. We will never be able to have true public policy discussions, debates, and the deliberation that our residents demand, that the legislature has, that Congress has, that virtually every other municipality in the state of Michigan has, with the constant, never-ending sarcasm, the personal attacks, the lies, the misinformation, the disinformation, the ridiculous comments at every single turn from Trustee Joseph. We will never, ever function as a community. These are my opinions. Nothing that this guy brings forward is legitimate, and everything stinks. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 9:44 p.m.